One of the reasons that it took me so long to come over to this side of the Atlantic as a public person is because it's sort of shameful that you all speak my language and I don't speak yours. It makes me feel like the class dunce, actually, a little bit. But the other thing was, I was sort of curious to see if there would be any reaction at all. I'm amazed that all you people are here, but you know, for years, old American rockers have come to Europe and have got a warm welcome, so I thought maybe an old American writer could come over here and get the same sort of reaction. But it's great anyway, and I really appreciate it. And a lot of people have asked me about the sort of stuff that I write, and don't ask me where I get my ideas because I don't know. But obviously I got a reputation somewhere along the way as a horror writer. I was in a supermarket in Florida last year, and I came around the corner, and there was an old lady who was pushing a shopping cart. She was bent over with the scoliosis, and she said, "I know who you are. You're Stephen King. You write those horror books." "Well, I don't care for those horror books," she said. "I like uplifting things like that Shawshank Redemption." And I said, "I wrote that," and she said, "No, you didn't." So I guess that you'll call me what you want to call me. The real key to scaring people, nobody really gets case hardened to fright. And the key to it is to create characters that people care about. If you care about them and they're put in jeopardy, you're going to be afraid for them, because that's one of the great things about human nature. We have that empathy. We have that ability to put ourselves in somebody else's place and to feel for them. I'm a novelist of the emotions. I care about your brain, you know, as the bishop said to the chorus girl. But I want to reach you emotionally first. You know, I want to sort of have that tactile close-up. I want to make your flesh creep. I want to make your pulse race. I want to make your eyes tear up, that sort of. Well, I'm more interested in the actual experience of dying than I used to be, because I'm closer to it than I used to be. It seems a lot less like an academic subject to me than it did a few years ago. I'm interested in the subject of dying, but also there's a universality to it. It's the one thing that we all go through, every one of us. There are no exceptions. The only other thing that we all go through, I think, is birth. And after that, it's all up for grabs. But we've all seen birth, and we've all experienced it, and we've lived through it. Nobody's ever come back to talk about the actual death experience. So it's a mystery, and mysteries interest me, so I've written about that, and I guess in an effort to understand it to some. Frankly, I don't know what would have happened. That was a very fortuitous occurrence. At the time that she picked that manuscript out of the trash and brushed off the cigarette ashes from it, we were living in a two-room apartment. We had no phone, and the book got finished, and it got sent out to Doubleday, and the advance on the book was very, very tiny. And about 6 months after it was accepted, and about 2 or 3 months before it was published, my editor from Doubleday called and said, "We've sold the paperback rights to your book." And I said, "Well, that's terrific. How much did you get?" And he said, "We got $400,000. And I said, $4,000? Was that it? Because that figure at least made sense to me, you know. He said, "No, $400,000. And the strength went out of my legs, and I sat down on the floor between the living room and the dining room of the house where he called me. And I was just stunned. You know, it was like winning the lottery, except when you win the lottery, you don't really do anything except buy a ticket, and I had at least written this book, so I'd done the work. And it was Sunday, and I was in my little town, and the only thing that was open, I thought to myself, I have to buy my wife a present because she rescued this book. I must buy my wife a present. My God, we just made $400,000. You know, I was living at that point on $6,400 a year. We were supporting a family of 4. And I thought, I have to get her something, I must. But nothing's open. But the Rexall drugstore was open, so I bought her a hairdryer. Yeah, I was nervous. I won't say that I was, I mean, I use that, the whole idea of the challenge. But a lot of people think of The Shining as one of the scary books that they've read in their lives. And the thing is, most of them who come up to me and say, you know, that Shining, that book really scared me. And I'll say, well, yes. You were 14 years old, you were away at summer camp, and you were reading with a flashlight under your covers. Of course I scared you. You were easy. You were a virgin. You hadn't seen Friday the 13th, Last House on the Left, or any of those things. You were easy to scare. Now they're all grown up, and you know, no matter what you write, there'll be a contingent who'll say, well, that wasn't very scary, you know. So there was that, I wouldn't say nervousness, but there was that challenge. You convert the nerves into a challenge. It has a feeling of balance. You want to create a circle. You want to create something that has roundness and fullness. There's a sort of satisfaction to that. I can't explain it. It's just there. It's like a song where the chorus comes back around. So I wanted to bring him back there, and at the same time, I didn't want to force him. You don't want to force your characters to do anything. It's about Danny Torrance and why come back to him. He never really left my mind, because I'm thinking to myself, here's a little kid who grew up in an abusive household with a father who broke his arm and was always on the hair trigger of violence, and the kid knows it. And he was also an alcoholic, a child of an alcoholic. You know, in the language of today, that makes him a codependent. And I read a definition of a codependent. A codependent is a person who, if they're drowning, someone else's life flashes before their eyes. And so, you know, I've known a lot of people, and I think we all have, who may say, well, I grew up in a family where dad beat mom, or dad beat mom and me and the other kids, or I grew up in a family where dad would come home drunk and we had to tiptoe around him because he was apt to be ugly and mean and that sort of thing. And they would finish by saying, I will never do that. And then they find themselves at 21, you know, with a drink in their hands and getting in bar fights. The past has a tendency to repeat itself. And so I thought to myself, I want to see what's going on with this kid as a grown-up and what happened to his Shining. I got curious, and that doesn't happen to me very often. Usually, you know, when I get to the end of a story, I'm done with those people because, not because I don't like them anymore, but because I don't know what happens next. How autobiographical is Danny Torrance?
Character, yeah.
Not very. Jack Torrance was a little bit more autobiographical, but I think that to some degree, all characters that a writer writes about are himself. You just, you disguise them in different ways. As to what I'm afraid of now, I would say at my age, I'm afraid of Alzheimer's, dementia, declining intellectual ability. That scares the heck out of me.
Record of audience.
I don't understand the interest. I mean, I'm just an old, washed up writer. But it's great that everybody came. It makes me feel like Justin Bieber. The Beeb.
Thank you.
It's not scary. It's wonderful, and I'm really glad that you all came.